Foreign Policy Views.Source, the 2024 Candidates on Foreign Policy, Council on Foreign Relations. Harris said Washington needs to do more to ensure companies use AI tools responsibly. She led early efforts to establish a federal approach to AI governance, and the Biden-Harris administration has also taken steps to slow China's development of advanced technology. Harris said the U.S. needs to hold China accountable for human rights abuses and distortions of the global economy, but also work with China to address global challenges. Trump has sought to confront China over what he sees as a range of economic abuses. He has argued that drastic action is needed to protect American workers and reduce the large trade deficit between the two countries. Climate change. In recent years, extreme weather events have taken an increasingly devastating toll around the globe. As global temperatures continue to rise at an alarming rate, the likelihood of severe droughts, excessive rainfall, fierce storms and massive wildfires is increasing. Experts warn that shifting climate patterns will facilitate the spread of disease and contribute to food and water shortages. Harris has called the climate crisis an existential threat to humanity. She has supported many of Biden's climate policies, including his decision to rejoin the Paris Agreement, and she cast the deciding vote to pass the largest clean energy and climate investment bill in U.S. history. Trump, meanwhile, has repeatedly questioned the science behind climate change and expressed doubts about whether human activity is responsible for it. He has pledged to expand domestic fossil fuel production, review Biden's clean energy initiatives, and withdraw the U.S. from major global climate change efforts. Defense and NATO. The U.S. defense strategy has shifted toward competing with great powers like China and Russia, after nearly 2 decades of focusing on military deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. With U.S. troops in 178 countries, the role of the U.S. military and its alliances has become increasingly controversial. Harris has established herself as a strong supporter of multilateral cooperation and NATO. She has emphasized the U.S. commitment to Ukraine and promoted national space policy as chair of the White House National Space Council. Trump has criticized NATO and threatened to withdraw from the alliance. During his presidency, he has significantly increased defense spending and reshaped the U.S. national security strategy to focus on China and Russia. Fiscal policy and national debt. The health of the economy is a key factor in America's ability to influence international events. While the economy still outperforms other countries, many economists point to worrying signs. Debt levels are soaring, inflation remains high, and American companies are falling behind in creating some advanced technologies. Harris has said her economic policy is focused on creating more opportunities for the middle class. The Biden-Harris administration has focused on public investments in infrastructure and green energy, fighting mergers, and raising taxes on corporations and the wealthiest Americans to pay for increased spending. During his presidency, Trump has emphasized tax cuts and economic deregulation, which he says have spurred growth, innovation, and job creation. He said government spending needs to be drastically cut to reduce inflation. Global health and pandemic preparedness. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused profound economic and social changes around the world and raised concerns about the world's preparedness for future large-scale biological or viral threats. The political ramifications of the response to the pandemic could threaten the future of U.S. global health programs, which have enjoyed strong bipartisan support. Ms. Harris has prioritized national and international health care issues. She has been a strong supporter of reproductive rights and has promised to restore abortion rights that were struck down by the Supreme Court. She has also been involved in the administration's efforts to address the opioid epidemic. Mr. Trump oversaw the federal response in the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, approving trillions of dollars to stimulate the economy and establishing public-private partnerships to develop vaccines. He withdrew Washington from the World Health Organization, WHO, and imposed a rule barring organizations that receive U.S. funding from using the agency's technology. Use of any foreign aid for abortion-related purposes. Immigration. The heated debate over immigration has become a focal point of domestic politics as the flow of migrants to the U.S. Mexico border continues to increase, straining local and federal resources. Border security and asylum policies have become increasingly contentious, and efforts to comprehensively reform the immigration system have repeatedly failed in Congress. Harris supports comprehensive immigration reform. She has been tasked with leading federal efforts to address the root causes of migration from Central America, although her comments advising would-be migrants not to come to the United States have been controversial. Immigration and border policy remain Trump's signature issues, and the party's 2024 agenda reaffirms his commitment to a range of measures aimed at drastically reducing both legal and illegal immigration. This includes continuing actions taken during Trump's first term to radically reshape asylum, border, and deportation policies. Middle East. The Middle East continues to capture global attention and pose challenges to the United States as attacks by the Houthi rebel group threaten supply chains, and debate continues over how to respond to destabilizing Iranian activity. Meanwhile, the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas, with its growing death toll, makes the prospect of lasting peace in the region seem increasingly remote. Harris supports a ceasefire and a hostage rescue deal in the Israel-Hamas war. She also calls for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As a senator, she supported the Iran nuclear deal and voted in favor of restrictions on arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Mr. Trump's approach to the Middle East has been defined by his strong support for Israel and Saudi Arabia, along with his confrontational stance toward Iran. He has abandoned long-standing bipartisan consensus by declaring that he has no interest in a separate Palestinian state.